I can also never not laugh about it. Almost. All right. Hello.
Hello.
We're here. I'm pretty sure we're here.
We think we're live, as usual. Not sure about anything.
Ever.
Des, do we need to start with a rating?
Our rates we are rated R. What we rated R?
We're rated R because of bad words.
Bad words. Okay, I've done my duty.
I'm gonna say fuck a lot for sure. Always happens every time. So I'm so excited about tonight because we have someone that's like certainly famous to but also famous to me can be sometimes weird for other people. So I'm so excited to have your fat friend on as our we're going to talk the connections between fatness and experience of fatness inside in a bunch of different ways. And I'll start with some introductions and then we in. So I am Jess and I work in Denver, Colorado at a crisis center and then do a bunch of advocacy and other work related to the intersections between lived experience and suicide and mental health and substance use, those kinds of spaces. Really looking at liberatory frameworks for thinking about those things. Des, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Dese'Rae Stage. I created Live Through This, which is a series of portraits and true stories of suicide attempt survivors across the United States. I also work on 100 other projects. I hurtmyselftoday.com. Well, I don't even know what I'm working on this week. Well, I'm working on getting an MSW this week. That's been my main focus right now. I'm doing a policy class. Yeah, that's also, I tried to kill myself once, and I like to talk about that a lot.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that part. I also tried to kill myself at least once, maybe other times. It's hard to say which ones count. And which ones were just like weird, like bleach drinking or something, you know?
My mom is here.
Sometimes do that. Oh, Dez's mom is here. She comes on a lot. It's really exciting to me, actually. So then we have your fat friend on. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm your fat friend. I don't use my name publicly. I just go by your fat friend. And I write on the internet about being fat. And the things that you might know me from are Twitter, Instagram, and a regular column with Self Magazine.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's me. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. You have such a fantastic radio voice, too.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, so much better than us as the hosts of this show.
I'm really glad that we're getting this out now that I am here to take both of your jobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
No one's getting paid, so
sure.
Enjoy
cool.
that.
Excellent.
As our regular viewers know, one of my ways that I try and make friends is by like aggressively interneting at them until they become my friends. So you're on the path.
Yep.
So hopefully you'll be my frat friend by the end of this.
Full tractor beam. I'm on it. I'm in it. Yes. Let's do it.
All right. Yes. So tell me about like what makes you interested in the topic of suicide or how your work intersects with suicide. Anything that connects those two things.
Sure thing. So I will say my interest in suicide is, a couple-fold. One is that I grew up and came out as a queer kid in the late 90s in a small school that thought it was super progressive and just watched a lot of queer classmates. One of the only out kids in my class. And I watched a lot of closeted queer kids or complete suicide. So it runs real deep for this guy. In terms of my work, I think like I'm super interested in like a lot of my work centers around sort of like what are the unarticulated harms that our cultural attitudes toward fat people are causing for those people. We spend a lot of time talking about fat people without talking to them. To us, I should say. And I think this is one of the great, like, massively underexplored arenas, right? Is sort of like, what are the links between fatness and not just body image? There's plenty of that out there, right?
Yeah.
But fatness and experiences of anti-fat bias and mental health, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a pretty big gap. A lot of territory to cover there.
So much territory to cover, and I think there's a lot of fear in certain ways, in on all sides of talking about some of these issues. Like, we don't want to get into a space where it seems like we're saying that, like, it's fatness that causes people to think about suicide, because, like, that's certainly not where we're going to come from on this show.
No.
And then, but like, even just starting to think about, like, the associations and connections between, like, fatness and madness, or fat and mad identities, and then suicide, gets us into some dicey territory sometimes, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, like, part of it too is like, it's tricky, right? Because, like, the conversation that I would love to have around fatness and mental health and suicidality, both, is the ways in which fat people's experiences of other people's bias and judgment leads us down a road where mental illness is triggered, right, by those experiences of bias, and where depression and anxiety and a lot of things that we sort of think about pathologizing, right, are very rational reactions to the ways in which other people treat us, right?
Right.
So, like, I am a lifelong anxious person. Cool. And as I have sort of moved through the world as a sort of indisputably fat adult, not like I feel fat, but like everyone who sees me is like, who's that fat lady? Right? Like, not how I feel about myself, but how the world receives me, right?
Yeah.
That as I have sort of moved through the world as a fat adult, my experiences of, street harassment or physical violence or intimidation, or sort of very constant sort of low grade bullying. Anxiety is a reasonable response to those things. I'm also an anxious person, but it is a rational response to, if someone sees me in the grocery store and starts taking food out of my because they think it's not good for me.
Right.
It is a rational response to be anxious about going to the grocery store, going to that same grocery store, right? So I'm super interested in that, and the trick here is that there are a lot of unanswered questions there, because there just are not a lot of conversations about this.
Yeah, and this is like one of those great spaces to me where we can dig in a little bit and really, really think about, like, some of the problems about locating illness, like mental illness, as something internal to someone, instead of talking about it as something that is like that happens to them, that is externally, sometimes externally driven. I think we have so much focus on medicalizing both around health and fatness, and then also mental health, mental illness, that this is one of those spaces where it just kind of explodes and becomes really, really intense for people.
Absolutely. I mean, I also think so, like, full disclosure, I had a day-long call with a friend last week who was had a plan and was moving through it, and I was, trying to be there with her and keep her from following through on that plan.
Yeah.
And a lot of the sort of reasons that she offered were direct results of the way that the world receives her as a Black person, as a woman, and as a trans woman.
Yeah.
And as someone who transitioned in prison. Cool. So for me to meet her with, I think, what a lot of our sort of like dominant messages are around suicide, and just be like, it's really selfish, right? It's like so fully, like, that would make me such an absolute asshole,
Yeah.
right? To be like, I don't want to hear about poverty and racism. It's selfish to me, a white woman. you would do this, right? Like, so.
Right.
So it does feel like there's sort of this big gap, and I feel like fatness is one of those big gaps, right?
Yeah.
Where there's like sort of a lack of understanding of like, no, there's a reasoned response here.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's one that people might be able to understand more, because I feel like people who are thin also feel affected in pretty significant ways by anti-fatness, which is not always the case when we look at some other spaces. So it's an interesting place, because that causes problems in some ways, and also can cause, or can be a ground for us to connect around stuff. Because sometimes it makes people feel like their experience as a thin person fearing fatness is the same as being fat, and it's not.
Boy, amen to that. There's actually been like a tiny bit of research on this. That gosh, I'm going to have to dig up the citation, and I apologize. But essentially, there have been some studies of thin women's perception of anti-fatness and fat women's perception of anti-fatness. For many of the thin women who participated in the survey, I should say, it was their belief that they had experienced anti-fatness by having been called fat. Like ever, right? Which is, hello, welcome to the world of having a body, right? Like, yes, you've been called fat. Great, we're on the internet. Everyone's getting called fat. Everybody's getting called gay. Great. In my case, you're right on both counts. But the trick was, and the fascinating thing about the findings of that study were that the thin women reinforced their own anti-fatness because they believed it helped, quote unquote, keep them on track and keep them thin. And they genuinely believed that would also help fat people. What they heard from fat people was, this is horrible, please stop it. Oh my God, please stop it. Leave us alone. Anyway, it's like a fascinating moment of sort of what you're talking about here, right? Which is just like, oh man, everybody thinks they've experienced it. Which means kind of no one's listening to really fat people.
Right, yeah. Right, then we can just into this group that has a lot of privilege, because they don't feel like they have it, right?
Sounds super familiar to us and our experiences as people with lived experience in the suicidology field.
Yeah.
I believe it.
There's a ton of talking around people who are actually suicidal and about them, but not like really directly asking them about their experiences.
To the point where we'll do psychological autopsies before we ask suicidal people why they want to.
What a cool thing to do, guys.
Yes.
Like that's a hard one to wrap my brain around. Sorry.
Yeah, it's really icky. We go down that rabbit hole a lot.
Yelling about science.
Yeah, science. Let's put that science in quotes.
Yes.
So let's talk about how fat phobia or anti-fatness might contribute to suicidal thoughts, actions among fat folks.
Have a toddler dragging things across the house.
I was like, is a building being imploded?
I was like, where's this coming from?
Gus is very powerful, so.
He is very powerful, yes. I will repeat that question because I got stuck today. So, what are the sort of connections between fat phobia or anti-fatness contribute to suicide thoughts and actions among fat people?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing here is I did a little extra looking around before talking to you all into the research on this, and as far as I could find, this is like a cursory look, right? And suicidology is not where most of my sort of work lives. So somebody say the word if there's more than this. I sure didn't find it. What I found was one study out of Germany that looked at.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Right. That looked at suicidality and BMI and broke out that data based on BMI, which is really fascinating that folks are gathering that information, but not disaggregating the data based on that information, right?
Yeah.
essentially what they found was that the fatter you are, the more likely you are to be suicidal. That the rates increase pretty astronomically for people based on how fat they are according to their BMI, which is not a great measure. Don't recommend it. But it is the tool that we have in this case, right?
Right.
The trick here, and part of the reason that we don't have more data on this stuff, is that no one's actually really funding research into the lives or experiences of fat people, right?
Shocking.
Yeah, hi. So most of the research funding that exists around fatness is, why is it so bad? How bad is it? And how do we stop having fat people?
Right.
Right? Not actually like, are they okay? Is there more that we could do to support fat people? What would be helpful? Could we improve health outcomes? Is there anything we could do? Right? Like, there's sort
Right.
of all of this stuff that is totally unexplored because we're so busy being like, but how do we get rid of them?
Right.
Right? And that is sort of the main focus there. So I would love to be able to answer with more research if someone would
Yeah.
fund and do that research.
How do we stop having fat people?
I think it's interesting too because I wonder how much of the like not the disinterest in funding that kind of research is sort of about. I think there's this underlying message or sometimes overt message we get in healthcare settings, including mental health settings, that is like, well, like you kind of should want to die. And
Yeah.
like are exposed, like you're exposing yourself to all these risks by like being a fat person. Like really all we need to do is focus on making you not fat. And if you're not good enough at being not fat, then like you're kind of deserving of wanting to kill yourself, or you're deserving of diabetes, or you're deserving of complications related to a health issue, or you're deserving of not even being able to access healthcare because providers like literally don't know how much anesthesia it takes for people over a certain weight or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say I had a real fun experience at one point of anesthesia wearing off midway through a dental procedure.
Ooh.
Yeah, having my wisdom teeth out because they did the, yeah, totally, because they did the math wrong for old fatty over here. But like, yes, absolutely, right? That there are a couple of things sort of going on here. One is that the healthcare system itself and the mental health care system both process fat people through the lens of shame. Like always, we are always preceded by shame. No matter how we're feeling, no matter what's going on with us, we don't get asked. We just are ashamed because they can see us and they would be ashamed to be in our bodies, right?
Yeah.
Which means that therapists and counselors and sort of folks from many corners of mental health sort of care provision will tell patients, this has not happened to me, it has happened to many people that I know and love, will say, you're actually just depressed because you need to lose weight. And I can't treat your depression until you are thin.
Yep.
And when you're thin, you won't need me anymore. Bye. Right? Which is a massive oversimplification, right, of actually how depression works in people's brains. Right. Yeah, so that part feels tricky. And I think the other part that really, really plays into this, to my mind, is that the messages that we send to fat people on sort of a macro cultural level, even the ways that we talk about that, like thin people will talk about getting fat, is no one will ever love me.
Yeah.
Nobody cares what you're going through. If you're fat and people treat you like shit, then you deserve it. You brought it on yourself because you could choose to be thin, right? That like all of these messages and the things that people will say to fat people's faces are the things that a suicidal brain or a very depressed brain will tell a person, right? So it's really fascinating and disheartening, frankly, that there's no interest yet, at least, in pulling that apart a little bit and looking at like, oh, it's not necessarily an irrational response or a selfish response or any of the other sort of ways that we sort of tend to talk culturally about suicide. It is actually a response to a lifetime of lived experience. And that needs tackling, right? Not necessarily weight loss, although maybe also weight loss for that person. What do I know? They get to decide their own body. I don't. But like, it feels really tricky that there's sort of like very much interest, it seems, in digging underneath, how fat people become suicidal.
Yeah.
How about you all? Has this come up for you all before? Fatness and suicide? Are there conversations you all have had about this?
Yeah. So I have some lived experience around it where like I was I was put on medications when I was pretty young, and then there were just constant discussions about whether the medications I was on were the thing making me fat or if it was just me. So like just this constant discussion, a lot of like decision making that was like, ooh, well, you hear voices, so you really need to be on this like fucking hardcore antipsychotic, but also what if it makes you fat? So like this, there was no right way for me to be, which was pretty much made me hate psychiatry if I wasn't anyway. I also pretty consistently would have, if I was in a treatment program, I had a diet component that was required and weigh-ins often at sessions, and that's really, really common for women who are fat in those kinds of like longer term programs. So that was interesting, and then the other side of it that was really interesting to me was so like I got much more fat after I wasn't as like acutely suicidal. So that's interesting. And not what people would expect. They would be really freaked out by that, actually. But then also like in the anti-psychiatry space, which I have sort of dabbled in and run away from screaming mostly because of their anti-fatness, is actually because there's this whole thing that anti-psychiatry wants to sell people, which is like, you got fat because of medications, let's get you off the pills, and then you can be a thin, desirable person again.
No, God!
Yeah, so then it's like, anti-psychiatry should be this safe space, and it's actually just as fucked up. And people talk about it. It's like a common narrative in anti-psychiatry to be like, I was on all these medications, I was drooling, I had tardive dyskinesia, and I was so fat, and now I'm healthy. And so like this like health narrative that goes along with it is really gross.
One of your biggest beefs with that particular movement.
I hate it. I like don't owe anyone fucking health anyway. Like even if health was part of fatness, which I don't think there's convincing evidence that it is, like even if health was really a core component of that, like I don't owe you being healthy anyway.
Right, and also like I feel like there's this really tricky thing around health, right? Which is we perceive fat people as unhealthy, and then we judge them for being unhealthy.
Right.
And we treat them different for being unhealthy, which is all ableism and healthism, right?
Yeah.
That is all born of the kind of animus that we usually reserve for disabled people and for mad folks, right?
Yeah.
And it feels really tidy that when people who are super anti-fat treat us like shit, and even people who don't consider themselves super anti-fat treat us like shit, that they then go, well, but you're unhealthy, so I have to, right?
Right.
Which is like, is this how you treat other people who you think are not healthy? Is this how you treat people with chronic illnesses? Is this how you treat people in cancer treatment? Is this how you treat people with a broken leg? Like what? Like help me understand what the connection is between your bad behavior toward fat people and your perception of their health. Like, why does that matter to you? And I think that's another conversation that I'm just like, oh, we don't have that enough.
Yeah.
You want to move? I want to look through the comments.
Oh, sure. It's beyond them for reasons, not low. I was actually just going to ask you if there were things on there.
Okay. Your sister likes your name. That's what she said. And my wife was being a super fan on the couch, but now she's upstairs because being Godzilla. People are now self-identifying as industry. Yes. Jenny said, I assumed the broad social consensus that us fatties are slowly killing ourselves all the time meant nobody needed to church. So that was a few minutes ago, but I enjoyed that. Joel said amazing things as usual. Let's see. Let's see. There are so many. Okay, she said you can connect the dots in terms of chronic health conditions, poor treatment by health systems in regards to those conditions. Worse the fatter you are. Financial consequences to anti-fatness, suicidality in poor populations, etc., etc. She said people have this to give. In short, TLDR. One thing that fell, who is my wife, said that I was thinking when you were talking about anesthesia and stuff is that fertility treatment is one of the, I think, is pretty discriminatory in terms of fatness. I know people who have been turned away from IVF because they were too fat. And we were given the option to sign waivers to receive treatment. Fell specifically signed a waiver for because her BMI was too high. I signed a waiver because I was too crazy. So yeah. Yeah. There'll be 10 of them. That's all I got. But I did want to bring up those few things. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Okay, wait. Pause. We have apparently anyone people can only hear me all of a sudden. I don't know why. I don't know what to do. They're all just saying stop, we can't hear you. But nothing changed, so I don't know how to. Yeah. They're saying they can only hear me. I don't know how to for the last 5 minutes. Well shit, that's not good. Yeah. I don't know how to unplug and stuff it back in there. What are we stuffing in? Unplug and stuff, guys.
The
People.
unplug your
You. They can hear me.
All
I'm
right,
not using anything,
What the fuck?
unplugging and stuffing.
but I'll try.
Blowing it. All right, I'm gonna unplug and stuff too. I don't know.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, of course. Then she said it's working, and but now I have probably ruined everything. Yes. Off. No. Well, I'm not back. All right. Let's see. Jess is an ass. I don't know what's happening. You can still hear me, but I can't see anybody. I am so confused about what's happening right now, people. It's just never a dull moment. It's It's all me. Yay! I don't know what to do. Okay, wait. Jess looks like she's popping back on. All right. We are missing... This unplugging stuff was a bad idea. Jess, I can't hear you. She's there, but I don't... All right. I can hear you, Jess. No.
Hear me?
Nothing. The joys of a live show, man. What have we do? What the hell? This is so strange. Still can't hear Jess. Jess is going out. I can't hear anybody, so I can't see anybody. I can't hear anybody. So, alright, I'm gonna microphone. Okay. And then I'm just testing things, guys, because I don't know what to do. Are you guys here? Jess? I am here. I can't telepathically translate what she's saying because I can't hear her. If we were thin, this wouldn't happen. I don't know if she's start over. I am kind of enjoying that they're texting into me. This is anti-fatness. Okay, wait. I'm going to hang up this call, and we're going to try again. And I don't know what's going to happen to the thingamadoo. We may go away. We may come back. Try it. Okay. Come on, Skype. You can do it. Fucking. I hate Skype, guys. I hate it so much. Join call. Okay, I'm joining the call. Everybody come back. It says something went wrong. Good. Thanks, Skype, for letting me know that something went wrong. Just now. Meep now. Come on. What's happening? Well, this is a good time for me, everyone. I'm having a great time with this. All right, start call. I'm the only person on the call. Okay. Okay. Someone's trying to silence the mad fat ladies. Okay. Here we go again. She wants me to sing the Moana song, but I'm too stressed out to sing the fucking Moana song. You're welcome. Okay. All right, one back maybe. Can't hear anybody, but you're here. I feel like this is my problem. All right. Hold on. These guys.
I say words. I am called your fat friend now.
Yeah, no.
No, I took your job and now
So
you're
computer
mine.
thinks it's going into orbit. I don't know why.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
Oh, I've got a beach ball, so that's just like.
Yeah.
For
I thought your
you guys keep going. I
can't just keep talking to herself. Just what?
Yeah, I think it's my computer now. It's like all stressed out.
No.
You're gonna just give it a minute to try and work things out. Oh, I hate my eyeball.
Let's see.
This blaze on white.
Great.
Someone say something to me? No, I don't know what to do. Oh, wait. Your computer. No? Jess, I'm calling you. I'm calling you. Calling you.
Hello.
What's happening?
What's happening?
I don't know what to do. My shit's all fucked up.
Your computer's just fucked up?
I think it's Skype. Now it's saying there are issues with my audio, like all of a sudden.
Access Skype entirely, like shut it all the way down and then start over?
I guess.
Yeah.
I don't like. Can you guys even hear me as I'm talking on the mic?
No, we can't hear you at all. We can hear each other though.
Okay. We can hear the speakerphone well. Fantastic. Very good. Should be doing this. I don't fucking.
What are I?
on audio on the phone. Okay, let's just stay on the phone.
Stay on the phone and then what?
And then do it, because everyone can hear us this way.
They hear us right now?
Apparently.
They can hear you?
I don't get it.
I don't get how they can hear you. I can barely hear you on my speaker.
That's the problem of ears. Joelle says it's captioning the phone too.
So if I can hear you, I'm about to keep going, or we could do another one.
Where is the YFF?
Here? Good either way?
Okay, I can hear you. All right, let's do this. It's fine.
Let's do it. Okay. Apparently they can. This is the jankiest way that we have proceeded with suicide and stuff, but it wouldn't be our show if there wasn't something real stupid happening. Like unbelievably weird. So, here we are. Okay, we were talking about a thing.
I don't know what the fuck we were.
Oh, I was about to ask another question. That's what we were doing. So my other question was about how there are connections between madness and fatness, and that oftentimes fatness is used as kind of like evidence for madness, for craziness. Like this is how we know people are crazy, as like an indicator of mental instability, for example, and some of the complications that might cause. Yeah. Right. I'm just like, oh God, where to truly even begin? Yeah. This nonsense. Because it is super common. There is sort of a way in which we culturally think of, right, every fat body is culturally conceived of as a failed thin body. And then in order to be healed, in order to be whole, and in order to be okay, that fat person has to return to their sort of like purported natural state, quote unquote, of fitness, right? So the challenge here is that cultural belief has led into healthcare provision and into diagnostic codes and all kinds of stuff. So, for example, many fat people are very overt policed/bullied/harassed about what they eat, right? What we eat, when we eat it, where we eat it, who we're in front of, all of that stuff is subject to judgment. And for many fat people, certainly not all, but for many fat people, that materializes as anorexia, bulimia, or another restricted eating disorder. Yeah. However, the diagnostic sort of codes for anorexia require a BMI that is underweight. So if you are a fat person who is not eating like ever, or who is you actually are not gonna be diagnosed with that mental illness, right? Right. Which is really tricky business, man. So there's so much uncoupling to do between sort of like, what does the research tell us? Who's doing the research? What are the diagnostic codes? Why are they there? And how much is that just our cultural beliefs about fatness versus data-driven treatment versus treatment that is informed by the person that we're talking about? And I think is that mental health care providers will also sort of like struggle to keep their own perceptions at the door again, right? Like being a fat person might be like, you're just suicidal because you're so fat and it's gross and everyone's grossed out by it and you.
Yeah.
Why would you be suicidal? Just lose like, right? Which is like, oh no, this is a very good example of why.
It's your fault too. Yeah.
So it feels really, really thorny, right? Yeah. That there's just a lot to dig underneath here. I'm curious from you, Jess, as someone who's worked in this field as I don't know if you identify as that. I'm guessing so based on your shirt.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I'm curious about sort of how this shows up in the field. Right?
Oh yeah.
In your work experience around this.
Yeah. So it's interesting because like fatness has always been sort of this a symbol of like my madness and within mental health system. And then I feel like it also it compounds itself within my industry. So like within the mental health system, like fatness is like an indicator of impulse control problem. And if you're white and you're a woman and you tried to kill yourself and you're bad at impulse control, then you're borderline, right? So I've had that label on and off at different times. But then I think as a person who has like lived experience with suicide that I'm out about, who has lived experience with voice hearing that I'm out about, and is like as this visible marker of madness, which I think that's how my fatness gets read within my field, is like this visible marker of madness. So I think sometimes people have this reaction of like wanting me to have more control, like you need to take personal responsibility, you're out of control, like that kind of stuff shows up a lot. And it's never direct and overt, or that's not true. It is not usually direct and overt. It's usually like really insidious and hidden, but you'll like hear the things come up. And I have this like really interesting, like really bizarre memory of being in mental health spaces. People are often on like very extreme diets, which is really interesting, especially like more crunchy mental health spaces. So I remember so clearly being in this like training that was like a multiple day training, and the only soda they had at the training was Diet Coke. And people like saw me drinking a Diet Coke, and probably 40 people talked to me about how great it was that I was losing weight, or that I wanted to lose weight. And I was like, yeah, this is the only soda here. And like, and then Des had stuff about Diet Coke to say because Des loves Diet Coke on its own. A separate issue from this. But like, yeah, it was this really bizarre thing. And then I was like, wait, now I have to make a case for being fat? Like in this mental health space with my colleagues, I have to be like, no. I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm not a good fat. I'm a bad fat. Do you still trust me to like do training with you? Because I was the trainer. That's right, forgot to mention. I'm the trainer at this. I was the trainer at this training. Oh God! Yeah. So then I was like, also like, are they going to question my ability as a trainer if I then launch into this thing why I should be allowed to be fat? So it shows up in these very interesting spaces, and it's so hard for me to disentangle when I'm experiencing like anti-fatness and sadism. It's so hard to disentangle. I feel like they're so often connected, especially working in the field.
Well, I absolutely see that. I think it's really interesting, right? Like, so one of the many reasons that I was anonymous initially in this project was because I was in a new job that was pretty high profile in my field at the time. And I knew that if people knew that I was fat and I was not trying to lose weight, and that I was paying attention to how thin people treat fat people, how everyone treats fat people, particularly how thin people treat fat people, that would be a credibility buster, that would break up a bunch of my work relationships, that would ice me out of places where I needed to be able to represent my job.
Yeah.
And I needed to be able to do work, right?
Yeah.
And that there were people who would just categorically not work with me. In a field where I'd expect that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a really tricky thing, right? That there is a lot of changes that start built into the way that we think and talk about fat people, which is that you receive fat people who are not performing weight loss,
Right.
as people who are somehow sort of unhinged, right?
Yeah.
But also when fat people seek diagnoses and seek treatment for like any mental health needs we might need, we're like too fat to be crazy.
Yeah.
That feels real wild.
Yeah.
Fat to be crazy.
Yep. So no one's gonna help you, but everyone's gonna think it's your fault, and you certainly should have found your way out of this situation, right?
Right.
Kind of
Yeah. And as you say, this personal responsibility model really kicks in.
Yeah.
Sort of the most progressive people are all of a sudden real hardline Republicans who are just strapped.
Yeah.
You're fat, get on fat. Just also not helpful.
Yeah. So I want to go into. We usually have a section that's called Beef Corner, which we usually do in the middle, but we're going to do this kind of toward the end because I feel like the Beef Corner. Maybe we can have a collective beef about this Donald Trump business that's going on today.
I'm going to play the video. Hold on.
She's going to play the Beef Corner quick. It's tigers. It's me. Oh.
This is why I'm here. Bad
right.
production of a weird podcast thing.
So let's unpack Donald Trump because I feel like it plays into everything we've been talking about, like perfectly. So
can I open up a jump off point for this conversation? So I'll with a little bit of context for folks who were not on the internet until now today. So Donald Trump shared yesterday or the day before that hydroxychloroquine to prevent coronavirus. Nancy Pelosi then went on TV and started talking about how, and I quote, morbidly obese, which is not great, but not the worst part of this story to me personally.
yeah.
I wish that she did, but also that's the world we live in. So, like, I'm not taking down the speaker of the house. I'm a faceless stranger on the internet. Any aside, you have seen it. And I don't, I'm not trying, I don't want that. But the challenge here is what follows is that the internet exploded with extreme and sort of naked fat hate for the president, which is really hurtful and harmful. I consider myself a proud member of the political left, further left than Democrat or progressive, not so far left as anarchism, somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
And it really sucks to see how people were talking about not just Donald Trump, but fat people, how disgusted they are by fat bodies, how it's actually great that he's fat because people die sooner, which is like cool. And I feel like the jumping off point that I want to offer was this comment exchange that I saw, read that I had written about it. I did not teach, but somebody else did. Bless them for going in there. Which was, they said, there are, why do you think you call him fat? He is racist and homophobic and xenophobic and, oh man, there are so many things to pick from, right? Why is it important to call him that? And this other person said, well, because it gets to his ego and his narcissistic personality disorder.
Oh, there it is.
And I was like, oh man, you really just tied this all up on the right name for me. It's a very example, and please stop talking. individualism and sadism, right? We're treated right back to that. So it's just like the things that people know they won't be called on by most people, right? Most people do not stand up for that. Most people do not stand up for mad people. Most people do not stand up for disabled people, right? So it feels like a green light to go as far as you want to go in ways that would not be socially allowable for other identities. And that's absolutely like major for me.
And then they all become both evidence for and justification for discrimination on all sides, right? Is that like once we have put someone into that space where we're like, okay, they're fat and they're crazy, and therefore they like don't deserve respect, dignity, maybe to live. I mean, that's what you'll see all kinds of stuff about how you should kill yourself, things like that. It is really horrifying for me every time I have this moment where I have to be reminded that the people who are supposed to be my allies will absolutely turn on a fat person given the opportunity every single time. And it just never fucking fails.
It's real, like, boy, oh boy. I wrote a couple things about this. This feels like another, like, intersection, right? Which is, like, back to the too fat to be crazy, crazy fat. real mind meld happening there. Which is that a frequent response to my work, which is mostly about, y'all have not read things that I have written, it's mostly about, like, how people treat fat people. And what that says about us as a culture. Like, it generally tries to be pretty gentle with ideas that are very big and very challenging to a lot of people. And really every time I say anything, particularly around, what fat jokes about Trump communicate to fat people, I am met with, today so far, I haven't checked my email since we started, but today so far I've gotten 7 emails from strangers telling me to kill myself or telling me that they don't have to tell me to kill myself because I am, and I quote, myself to death. So it's also sort of a challenging thing, right, as we're sort of like unpacking these conversations to be like, again, when people are literally telling you to do the thing, that's a very different conversation than just like, your brain went bad. Right. Like, how we tend to talk about. Anyway, it's a real mind blower that, like, I feel like the Trump stuff exposes so much about who we're willing to go after. How readily. And man, the targets today have felt very clear.
It was so interesting when I woke up and I saw that this was trending. I was like, what? I was like, did we make this happen? I had one of those like very paranoid moments where did we make this happen? By deciding to do this, which is like, no, obviously not, because it's always right on the verge of happening, right? We're always right on the edge of someone being like, is it my turn to make fun of a fat person? Is it my turn to tell them that like they should kill themselves? Is it our big time to shine? And it's like, there are so many things to critique about, especially like this individual, but just in general, there's so many ways to critique people. Like, why is it this space? And let's say it does. Let's say it is something that really, really gets under someone's skin. Why is that the goal? Because, like, what does it do for us? What does it actually do for us if, at the end of the day today, Donald Trump is sitting in his office crying because people think he's fat and he deserves to die? Like, what does that do for us, actually?
Right. Hey, are there super kids in
Yeah.
And if it's also that, is he doing less of anything that he's doing?
No.
Is he, like, having a reckoning with his soul? Like, no. And it's also not getting them out of office. So I'm just like, oh, guys, if you want to have a conversation about tactics and strategy, let's have a conversation about tactics we approach public conversations about political clothes, let's have that conversation.
Yeah.
We want to have a conversation about how we treat fat people, let's have that conversation. But right now it feels like everyone is lumping everything in all together, right? And just being like, anything that is critical of any response to Trump. I got called a Russian bot today. That was real fun. What? It's been a long time, you guys.
Oh, yeah, this whole time I was just waiting for this moment.
It's sort of a really fascinating and challenging look at, again, just like so much anti-fatness and so much sort of built into this stuff.
Yeah. And it's just like so like deeply disappointing too, because I just it's nice to feel like you have real allies, and things that we're like working across identities to try and make the world better. So it's hard to have those moments where that's taken away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that was really challenging to me today about all of this, and it was like just to like talk about the emotional side of all of this, is like, so listen, if my mental health were in a shakier place than it is now, which it absolutely has been in the past, I think there is a very real possibility that today would have put me back onto a path of like self-harm, right? Like there's a bunch of stuff that this could have unlocked. And I think, again, like the problem isn't necessarily Pelosi, although that's not great. the problem also isn't even necessarily for me personally. The number of people who just like jumped out and were like, surprise, I hated fat people.
Right.
The thing that really hit me hardest was that only other fat people overwhelmingly stood up and said it.
Yeah.
Right, but there was just one, I'm sure there still is. I logged out of Twitter for the day. But there was truly horrific, gruesome, sometimes violent things being said to fat people who were just like, hey, when you say this, who were saying like incredibly calm, reasoned, clear requests, right? And were being met with, which is a good thing I don't have to listen to you because you're about to die. And we're like, it's, there are always those people, but also as a woman and as a queer person, I wouldn't have to do that. But as a fat person, I do, right?
Yeah.
Which is just like watching thousands and thousands and thousands of people watch all this play out and not actually say or do anything to defend fat people.
Yeah.
And the same goes for sort of the accusations of like narcissistic personality disorder and all of the sort of weird personality disorder talk that happens around here, which is like, hey, so we all know people who are diagnosed with personality disorder. 100% of us do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you say this about them?
Yep.
You're sort of talking about the president, and you're also sort of talking about a lot of people that you know and love. Why would you?
Yeah. God, the number of times I've called people out on that stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I did not catch.
She said the number of times that we have to call people out on that is amazing. Was that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think it's one of these spaces where we see this significant overlap, and this week is really interesting. I did an interview with a reporter, or a series of interviews, and Des is in them, and other friends of mine, and so there's a publication that's going to come out this week. And one of the things that I've been thinking through is like, in spaces where people can like talk about this article, there are going to be photos of me in it, and I'm going to talk about like having been suicidal, and so I was like, I just have to prepare myself for all the anti-fatness that I know is coming, right? So it's interesting that I was like preparing myself for this other thing, and then all of this stuff happened today, and I felt like blindsided from it because I was preparing for this other kind. And it just made me think about like all of the, like, at the very, very least, hypervigilance, I feel like, just gets drilled into you as a fat person. That's like that's the deal, is that like that's a way you have to be in the world because it's so unsafe for us so often.
That is a very good important point, and I super appreciate it. But also, I just got very distracted by
Jess's slide. Yeah, Jess is drinking. So there's a point in the night where it starts to be wine time. So yeah, thanks for going down that path. I thought it was really important for us to talk about that, and I figured it would be generally the beefs that we had would be around that today. Yeah. So I'm wondering, any like final kind of thoughts that people have or want to say? I know we didn't get through. I have a million questions that I always want to ask, and never get through with them. So, are there any big?
We're gonna have to bring her back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe we can have you back on another time. Oh, yes. Yeah. This would be great.
Boy, you caught me at the right time. Quarantine. I'm like, you the contact.
Great. Well, we will do it again because this was awesome, and there's so much more to talk about. But yeah, any final closing thoughts that you have?
Is there any like final thing that I just feel like my like wish for everyone all the time is to, when you are talking about yourself in relation to a group of people, when you're talking about yourself getting fat, you were talking about yourself going crazy, you were talking about yourself you know, any number of things, like getting sick, coming disabled, right? Like any of those things, play out those nightmare scenarios. Part of what you're doing is distancing yourself from a group of people, and part of what you're doing is reinforcing the stigma that they face, because you don't want to be part of it. And I would actually propose to people that a better solution to that anxiety is to actually use that energy to tackle that stigma head on, rather than to dig in on freaking out, right?
Yeah.
And environment from anxiety about gaining weight or about having new sort of mental health challenges or whatever, right? Like any number of things, right? That would be better served rather than saying the president is a narcissist, right?
Right.
Like, who's looking out for people who are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, right? Right, like who's sort of looking out for the folks that we're distancing ourselves from, and what social capital are we trying to get in that? Yeah. An uncomfortable thing to look at and sit with. It is a thing that I try to avoid looking at and sitting with myself. Totally get it. It feels like garbage to sit there. And also, we don't sit there, we make a whole lot of other people feel way more like garbage being told as the people who hurt and abuse those folks. So I'm just like, just chill it out, check in with yourself a little more. Yeah. That's my first wisdom for today. How about you all?
Oh, I think that was great and probably better than anything I was going to say. My general ending is always something along the lines of or around that like we all have work to do. We need to do the work, and while we're doing it, we need to be like gentle with ourselves because we don't get to be perfect in this. So we have to go in like knowing that we have to attend to that feeling of imperfection as we're trying to do the work to be better people. So hopefully we can all do that at least a little bit.
Yes.
I'm just gonna drink my wine because my audio's fucked up. I don't know.
That's a great ending too. We usually drink after this.
Mm-hmm.
The night. So.
All right.
Thank you so much. This was really great. We're really excited. I'm excited we can plan another time to have you back and hope you're full time. We will probably not figure out what happened, but we can hope it won't happen again. Just because that's the level of tech skill we have.
Yes.
Me too. I'm great.
We can all just be bad at it. We just know we're going into it being imperfect.
Exactly.
And it's doing best, right?
Just roll with it.
I would do it every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Hey.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna hit this finish button. All right. Say bye, everybody.